Stories Philippines podcast.
A darkness permeates this episode, touching on scenes and themes some may find deeply unsettling. The path ahead is not for the faint of heart. Listener discretion is a necessity. A restless heat pressed down on Manila that December, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Shadows pooled in the corners of government buildings, thick and watchful. The air was tinged with something unspoken, a sense that whatever had once been hidden was about to force itself back into the light. In the days leading up to the congressional hearings, people whispered in hallways and on street corners, their voices barely above a murmur. They were waiting for a ghost, a man who had vanished in the aftermath of an election scandal, a man whose absence had become its own kind of haunting. What does it mean for a nation to be haunted, not by the spirits of the dead, but by the living who refuse to answer for what they have done? Is there any terror deeper than the suspicion that justice will be denied, that truth can be buried, that the specter of wrongdoing will slip through the cracks and walk among us, untouchable? If stories of betrayal and unfinished business unsettle you, be forewarned. Tonight's episode lingers where the living and the dead, the seen and the hidden, the true and the untrue all blur together. The tale ahead may leave you wondering which ghosts truly haunt us, and which ones never left at all. I am Jessica, and you are listening to Stories Philippines podcast. This is Season 4, Episode 10, The Spectre in the Testimony, the return of Virgilio Garciano. Before we descend into tonight's shadows, let me remind you, the stories you share with us bring this podcast to life. If you have a tale that chills, unsettles, or haunts you, send it to our email, storiesphpodcast@gmail.com. Show notes and ways to support us are in the description. Unlock exclusive content on Patreon and follow our social media for daily folklore facts. December 2005. A nation still reeling from the Hello Garci tapes, an electoral scandal that had exploded into public consciousness the previous June. Those tapes, a series of wiretapped phone conversations between then-President Gloria Arroyo and Election Commissioner Virgilio Garciano, hinted at fraud in the 2004 elections. The voices on those tapes became infamous, their phrases echoing in the streets and marketplaces. Hello? Hello, Garci? So, will I still lead by more than 1 million? It was more than a question. It was a wound, reopened every time the tape was played. For months, Virgilio Garciano, the man whose nickname became shorthand for the entire scandal, had disappeared. Some said he had left the country, others that he was being sheltered by powerful friends. His absence became a symbol of everything that was broken in the system. In his place, there were rumors, accusations, conspiracy theories, and jokes. "Where is Garci?" became a national refrain, like asking where a restless spirit had gone after midnight. This feeling of a crucial missing piece, a blank space where a confession should have been, has a dark parallel in global history. Think of the Spanish Inquisition, where those who vanished were assumed to have been tortured or protected, their true fate a mystery that weighed on the entire community. Or consider the disappeared under South American dictatorships in the 1970s and 1980s. Individuals who simply ceased to exist, their unseen fate a terror more potent than death itself because it denied closure. Garciano's disappearance, while less physically sinister, evoked this same horror of the unknown and the willfully obscured. When Garciano finally reappeared in late December, he did not bring the closure the public craved. He arrived in Manila pale and thin, his eyes darting as if still searching for an exit. He was summoned to testify before Congress, and the cameras captured every flicker of emotion on his face. The hearings were not a confrontation or a reckoning. They were a performance. Questions circled like vultures, but answers slipped away like mist. Garciano denied wrongdoing. He said he did not remember. He said he had nothing to hide. The more he spoke, the less anyone understood. It was a masterclass in non-supernatural dread. The horror of watching justice slip through your fingers, of realizing that sometimes the truth is not simply hidden, but willfully erased. The air in the hearing room must have been thick with the smell of old paper, stale coffee, and the metallic tang of suppressed anger. The harsh, unforgiving light of the television cameras cast the faces of the congressman and the lone witness into sharp, high-contrast relief, making them seem less real, more like figures in a dark morality play. Every muffled cough, every rustle of documents, amplified the silence of the unsaid. In Filipino folklore, there is a long tradition of ghosts who linger because their stories are unfinished. The white lady who appears at the site of an old crime, her face obscured, her presence a reminder that some wounds never heal. In the case of the Hello Garci scandal, Garciano became a ghost who refused to stay hidden. He haunted the halls of power, his testimony another layer of fog over what had really happened. Folklorists from the Aswang Project remind us that monsters and spirits often serve as metaphors for a community's deepest fears. The Aswang, for instance, is a shapeshifter, able to look harmless by day and reveal its true nature only in darkness. In the months after the scandal broke, political cartoons and commentaries drew parallels between these supernatural shapeshifters and the public figures at the heart of the controversy. The Aswang was no longer a creature from the distant countryside. It was a metaphor for betrayal, for the hidden dangers within systems meant to protect. This idea of a hidden monster is not unique to the Philippines. Across the globe, from the vampires of European lore who hide their true nature behind a charming facade, to the shape-shifting spirits in Native American legends, the fear is always the same. That which appears safe is the most dangerous of all. In the city, old ghosts adapt to new fears. The encanto, once blamed for lost objects or sudden illnesses, became a symbol for those who charm and deceive, who appear helpful but lead you deeper into confusion. The Hello Garci tapes were, in their own way, a kind of modern curse, an object passed from hand to hand, infecting every listener with a sense of unease. The more people listened, the more uncertain they became about what was real. This mass psychological doubt, where an entire populace questions the very foundation of their democracy, is a form of collective trauma. It is the social equivalent of a man seeing a shadow in a familiar hallway, then questioning if his own mind is failing him. One listener, Carmela from Cebu City, wrote to us about an old courthouse in their province, a structure made of rough coral stone and dark, heavy wood, a relic from the Spanish era. At night, the clatter of typewriters could be heard echoing through empty hallways, and the shadow of a judge sometimes appeared in the tall, arched windows, long after the building had been abandoned. The air around the courthouse was always noticeably colder, even on the hottest days. Carmela said that her grandfather, a former clerk, told her the judge was a man known for taking bribes. He never rested because his last ruling, a deeply unjust one, was never overturned. The story, whether true or not, captured a feeling that many Filipinos recognized: the sense that justice itself could become a ghost, present but powerless, eternally trapped in the echo of its own failure. Chauvin's rounds always ended at the same locked door on the third floor. The clock in the guardhouse blinked 3 o'clock when the chill crept out from the vents and gathered under the strip lights. He saw the man there first. white barong buttoned neat to the throat, hair combed back like someone who'd never learned to be casual. The figure moved without hesitation, as if the corridor were a stage with a single cue. A ribbon of expensive cologne braided with the sour tang of old cigar smoke followed him, slipping along the linoleum and into Jovan's coat like an invisible visitor. Jovan called once, voice thin with fatigue and something like hope. The man paused at a corner, the light stuttering over his shoulder, then vanished before Jovan reached it. The scent lingered for minutes, then thinned, then settled inside Jovan's collar. He reported it in the log the next morning, the neat entries warping where his hand trembled. On the bus home, a commuter brushed past him, and for an instant, Jovan caught the same tobacco and amber notes on the woman's sleeve. He tightened his grip on his bag, feeling as if the scent left fingerprints on everyone it touched. Dante's nights were all courtroom fog. He found himself standing at the back of a room swallowed by slow, low mist that tasted like ozone and metal. He wanted to speak. His mouth opened and found only silence, as if his throat were lined with cotton. The accused walked to the witness box with the calm of a man who had rehearsed disappearance. Dante tried to speak the truth, whatever truth might have mattered, but the sound died in his teeth. The man in the box folded inward, like a paper figure creased along confident lines, and then dissolved into the white. The fog sucked the absence back up like breath. Dante woke with his tongue coated in the metallic tang and the hollow ache of having failed someone he had never known. Once, Jovan stayed with the scent longer. He trailed it to a set of double doors and listened to the silence on the other side. The smell curled under the gap like a hand, and then it was suddenly gone. He pressed his ear to the wood and heard nothing but the building's slow machines, air handlers, the soft sluice of pipes. He thought of the guardhouse clock blinking 3 a.m., of the way the lights made the carpet look like a river. When he wrote his report, he found the letters smaller than he remembered. The shapes seemed to be folding inward like someone trying not to be seen. Dante's dreams repeated until he stopped telling himself they were only dreams. In the courtroom, the paralysis began before the accused stepped forward, a preemptive surrender. The jury's faces were wrong, washed of features, and the judge's bench felt farther away with each failure to speak. The accused would smile as if sharing private victory and then simply wink out, leaving a smell in the dream Dante could not name, but that tasted of ozone and old regret. He woke every time with a small, bright panic. Words lodged like splinters in his throat. They both kept what they could of those encounters. Jovan kept the patrol log and the faint perfume stain along the inside of his uniform. He kept the habit of looking twice at corners. Dante kept a notebook by his bed, a list of phrases he could not say aloud in the dream, and a handful of sentences he forced himself to whisper until they stopped feeling foolish. Neither could explain the way the air remembered somebody else's passing, how a scent or a void could persist and fold into ordinary life like a paper crane. On certain mornings, the building smelled different. Colleagues walked by with a trace of smoke at their sleeves, or the cafeteria server would pause as if recalling a distant party. In his mind, Jovan began to map those moments like landmarks. A breath here, a pause there, a name never spoken. Dante learned to press his tongue to the roof of his mouth when he woke, tasting the ozone and using the flavor as a prompt. Speak now, he told himself, even if it was only to air the truth in the empty kitchen, to write it out on napkins until his hand could find its voice wet and steady. Powerlessness had weight. It piled onto them like the stale smoke and fog, small as dust until it made breathing a chore. Both men discovered, in the quiet aftermath of their sightings and dreams, that the important thing was not catching the vanished, but learning to carry what they left behind. The scent in a collar, the ache in a throat, the list of sentences waiting to be said. Those residues moved through the city, unnoticed by most, and they changed the way a man walked a hallway at 3 a.m., the way another answered a summons in a dream. In the aftermath of Garciano's testimony, the country slid into a kind of collective numbness. Protests flared and faded. Investigations began and stalled. The outrage that had once filled the streets became a quiet resignation. The ghost had returned, but the haunting continued. This fading of fury into quiet despair is an eerie echo of how many ancient cultures dealt with spirits they could not defeat. They simply learned to live alongside the haunting, adjusting their lives to avoid the affected areas or the hours when the ghost was most active. This is the horror of the unresolved, the sense that some stories will never end, that the wounds of the past will continue to bleed into the present. In the folklore of Bicol, there are tales of the Kalag, souls who cannot rest because their deaths went unavenged. They appear at the edges of vision, their presence a reminder that the past cannot be buried forever. The political crisis, in its own way, created a national Kalag, a restless, unavenged entity born from the failure of accountability. In the city, urban legends take on new forms. The White Lady of Balete Drive, once a warning to late-night drivers, becomes a symbol for all the things left unsaid, all the women whose stories were silenced. The Aswang, once a monster in the distant provinces, becomes a metaphor for corruption that hides in plain sight, one that consumes the vital energy and resources of a community without anyone ever seeing its true face. The fear of being drained by an unseen entity, a central theme in Aswang lore, perfectly mirrored the feeling of national resources and trust being mysteriously siphoned away. Our modern folklorists, comic book authors, artists, and filmmakers draw on these old stories to make sense of the present. In the popular graphic novel Trece, ancient spirits walk the streets of Manila, their old rivalries playing out against the backdrop of modern crime. In these stories, the supernatural is not separate from daily life. It is woven into the fabric of the city, a reminder that the boundaries between past and present, seen and unseen, are always thin. In the case of Garciano, the horror was not in what he revealed, but in what he concealed. His return was like the sudden reappearance of a ghost believed to be laid to rest. The public wanted catharsis, a reckoning, but instead received a performance. One that left the wounds open, the questions unanswered. Some listeners wrote in to share their own encounters with unfinished business. One woman named Aisha described a family curse that began after her grandfather covered up a crime in their small provincial town in Pangasinan. The crime involved a neighbor who mysteriously drowned in a well. For generations, every attempt to move forward was met with misfortune. Failed crops, sudden illness, strange noises at night that sounded like water splashing and muffled choking. The family believed that only a full confession could lift the curse, but no one dared speak the truth. The silence became its own ghost, suffocating and ever-present, a heavy shroud draped over every family gathering. Another listener, a young man named Marco, told of a friend who disappeared after being accused of theft at work. Months later, the friend returned to the city, thinner and quieter, refusing to talk about where he had been. He lived like a shadow, moving from couch to couch, his eyes perpetually wide. His coworkers whispered about what he might have seen, what secrets he might be carrying. The friend never spoke of it, but he never stayed in one place for long again, as if an invisible pursuer was always right behind him. The horror of Garciano's return is not in the supernatural, but in the ordinary. It is the dread of watching someone slip through the cracks, the fear that the truth will never be known. In this way, the episode becomes a ghost story, the haunting of a nation by its own failures. In Filipino social understanding, the concept of hiya, or shame, plays a powerful role in shaping behavior. When shame is public and unresolved, it can become a kind of haunting, an invisible force that shapes lives long after the original event has faded. The Hello Garci scandal was a national hiya, a shame that was never confronted, never resolved. The shame itself became the entity that followed the nation, whispering doubt into every subsequent political event. Religious traditions in the Philippines offer rituals for laying spirits to rest. Prayers, offerings, confessions. A mass for the dead is meant to ensure a soul's smooth passage. In politics, the rituals are more complicated. Committees are formed, hearings are held, reports are written. But if the truth remains buried, the haunting continues. A lie told in a brightly lit room with cameras rolling is a kind of spiritual violence, one that corrupts the very air of public discourse. After Garciano's testimony, the sense of unfinished business only grew. The hearings ended without resolution. No one was punished. The tapes were never fully explained. The president remained in office. The ghost had returned. But nothing changed. In urban legends, there are places where the boundaries between worlds are thin. Balete Drive, with its twisted trees and sudden mists. The old Manila Film Center, rumored to be haunted by the workers buried alive during its construction. A place where the cement floor seems to absorb all light and sound. In these places, the past insists on being remembered. The dead refuse to be forgotten. They are physical manifestations of unresolved tragedy. So it was with the Hello Garci scandal. The story faded from headlines, but it lived on in jokes, in rumors, in the quiet certainty that justice had not been done. The nation moved on, but the haunting remained. It became a permanent, unsettling part of the country's modern landscape, like a forgotten tombstone in the middle of a busy park. If you've ever felt the sting of injustice or the frustration of a story left unresolved, you're not alone. The past walks beside us, refusing to stay hidden, not in attics, but in the echoes of crimes left unpunished and questions left unanswered. Share your encounters with the unexplained, the unresolved, or the restless. Send them to storiesphpodcast@gmail.com. Check our show notes for more information and ways to support the podcast. For exclusive bonus episodes, join us on Patreon. For daily folklore and updates, follow us on social media. Before we close, consider one last question. What do we do when the ghosts won't go away? When the truth hovers just out of reach? Do we look away or keep searching, hoping the next testimony will finally expose what's been hidden? The dead don't rest until the truth is told. Perhaps that's why some stories never end. They're waiting for someone bold enough to finish them. Listen to past and future episodes for more journeys into the dark and unknown. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share. Support the podcast however you can. Details are in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.